Welcome back to the Rise with Anita podcast. On today's episode, I have our first returning guest, Sheree Cain-Jones, is back with us. Last time when she was in our space, she lit it on fire with raw truth, unshakable wisdom, and the kind of presence that makes you sit up straighter and breathe deeper. She walked us through her journey of surviving domestic violence and abuse. I will have to cut that out. To embody her worth, raising 4 incredible children, building a purpose-driven business, and reclaiming her voice, not just to be heard, but to heal, lead, and love from wholeness. And the moment, honestly, we met, I had a feeling that we would be not just having one conversation on our podcast, but multiple. So here we are, because let's just be honest, she doesn't just tell a story. She activates something in you. She reminds you about your micro decisions, which matter, that discipline is a love language to yourself, and that your relationships, romantic, familial, or your own soul, deserve to be safe, powerful, and expansive. So today we're about to dive a bit deeper. This episode is a little bit off the cuff, but I think this is going to be incredible. So welcome back.
What is up, Anita? I'm super excited to be here. I hope that they check the microphone because I'm already pumped, and that's a lot to live up to. I'm like, man, heal. We have to heal. I love it.
We do have to heal.
We do.
So we were chatting a little bit offline, but for those of you who don't know, we have not been in person together since our last conversation. So this is about to be all the juicy tea. It's kind of going to give you the vibes of two friends catching up and having the most raw, real conversations about where we are, how our journeys kind of intersected. And also, I was just thinking we touch on all the things, relationships, self-love, embodiment, because, we're at this phase and this point in life where we're constantly ever evolving. And so why not just go from there? How is life? What is bringing you joy in this current season?
What is bringing me joy in this current season is, for me, it's always about perspective and insight. I don't think that you ever arrive. And so I find myself in midlife and being surprised by my own self, just learning things about myself that I didn't know were there. And I think that that's really important to learn, to grow, to love yourself, to accept yourself. I always say that before you can really grow, you have to accept yourself. You've got to accept yourself where you are, not where you wish you were. So I'm just learning more to accept myself. And I'm like, I like you. Like, you're kind of interesting, Sheree, but like legit, like I really like you. So that's really bringing me joy.
I love your answer because I feel like I'm at a phase where before any transformation happens, we have to start off with really thinking about what part of me got me to where I am. Mm-hmm. And then you accept that. And then from the acceptance of this is how I got to the situation. And that can definitely look like taking ownership of my parts of where I didn't speak up in relationships, where I didn't lay down boundaries, where I overlooked my own skills, or whatever that looks like for you. We accept where we are, and then from there, we end up moving to a new perspective of how can I make the shift? What's next needed? But I love that you started off with accepting yourself and liking yourself, because if we don't like who we are in the mirror, there's only one way to change that, and that's to start radically owning and being truthful with who you are.
I love that. And when you were saying that, I've been really reflecting as we kind of end off the year, we're getting closer and closer to the end of 2025, is to make sure that I'm in alignment, that I am in alignment, that my purpose is in alignment with my vision. It's in alignment with my actions. It's in alignment with my decisions. It's in alignment with my behavior, and I have alignment with people. And one of the things I recognized was that, okay, there's some things that are out of alignment. And so I just kind of created this little checklist before I even meet with someone, because people don't know this. Like, I seem like I'm a really hard person. I was going to cuss. I don't know if I get out here.
There's no
like
off the cuff.
like I'm really a hard person, which I am. Like I'm a go-getter, but there are things that touch my heart where I can begin to violate like my own boundaries that I've created. So I had to look at the things and the behaviors and the actions and even down to the people I'm meeting with and ask myself, number one, is this a mission-oriented interaction? Is this a mission-oriented interaction? And if if it is not in alignment with my mission, it's automatic. It needs to be a no. It just needs to be no. And sometimes we think as women that you got to be nice. Nice is not necessary. Nice girls don't do anything. Girls who are in alignment do everything. So I have to look at it and say, hey, is this in alignment with my mission? And then the next question is, and I'm asking myself is what is the payoff? What's the return? Sometimes there's an emotional payoff, but I have to make sure that the payoff is not me validating myself by being in someone else's presence.
Oof.
I'm like, I just got to watch that. I have to make sure that I'm not trying to rescue someone. I'm not trying to fix someone. I'm not here the super sister savior. Like, I'm not getting that kind of emotional payoff, but it's a mission-oriented payoff where it is in me to help this person, but not to the detriment of my own self.
Oh my God. I love that you just went there because I feel, and the amount of conversations I've been having lately with women of, well, I don't know how to say no. And I'm like, eventually you're going to have to learn. Because at this point, and I've gotten to this point of my journey where I'm learning to start setting boundaries. And before it used to be, I had this habit of like, I would overexpress and I would communicate and I would let you know how I feel and why I feel that you need to do whatever in accordance to like the boundary I'm trying to set. Now it's more clear cut. I don't like this. This is what I'm holding. This is my standard. Please let me know how you want to go about it. I accept that if you don't want to follow that boundary. But I've gotten to a point where it's like, I really don't care to nourish a relationship that doesn't want to be aligned, as you just said, with the boundaries I'm setting for myself, the new standards I'm raising for myself.
If you don't set your boundaries, then someone else will.
Absolutely.
And it's just like, are you okay with that? And sometimes women, people in general, I think that this is a women thing, but it's not that you can't say no, you're uncomfortable with your no. You're actually trying to manage somebody else's moods, their actions, and their internal state. It's a form of control. So instead of just saying no to them, you say yes. And I think that there's some element of people pleasing. Absolutely. I don't want to appear mean. Since when is saying no, I can't go to the party, being mean? You're just letting people know what your ability is, what your capacity is. Mm-hmm. But when you don't say no, you end up doing things that are nice, but they're not necessary. And how does that work?
It doesn't. Long term, it doesn't. I mean, I think that I've found the more that we do set our standards essentially lower and accept being that people pleaser and doing what others are asking of us all the time. I mean, mm-hmm. obviously there's a level of compromise, mm-hmm. but I think when you get to the point of I'm at a state where I don't feel this is necessary or this is what I even really want to do, it's not aligned, and you continuously cross that boundary within yourself, because at that point by not setting the boundary with the other person, you're actually avoiding the boundary with yourself.
Some people don't even know what they want. So in order for you to set a boundary for what you want, you actually have to know what you want.
Absolutely.
You have to know what kind of relationship you want. Some people are like, well, I'm just, I just want somebody, but what kind of somebody? You want an abusive somebody? You want a broke down somebody? Like, you got to define what you want. And once you define what you want, you set some standards for what you want. That's kind of what I think. And then once you set the standard for what you want, now you have the ability to set the boundary for what you want. So it's not like, okay, I'm just setting boundaries. Yes, but what's the end? Why? Mm-hmm. It's going to go back to what I want. And for me, it's my purpose. So if I just end up saying yes to everyone and anyone. Somebody sent me a message and they were like, hey, like, can we get together? And I first question, is this mission oriented? No.
So what
No.
does that look like for you?
It looked like saying no.
No, I mean,
Oh.
when you say,
I was like, look like saying no.
no, I meant
In a nice way.
What does mission oriented look like? So obviously there's the grand scheme of things of what you're wanting to do with your coaching and your business and the impact you want to leave with the world. But on a personal scale, what does that look like for you?
Really, it's connected to my greater purpose. My purpose is really to help women walk out their purpose. And being on mission means that I am really coaching and speaking. So in this season, it's really focusing on my business and focusing on things that really make Sheree a better her. And the reason why is because I spent a lot of years pouring into everyone else's vision and not pouring into my own. So I'm actually using my past performance as a reason why I won't stay stuck. So I look at it and I just say, hey, you know what? At this stage in my life, like, this is just not a good idea. And I do a lot of futuring. So I don't know if you heard this. When you look at your decisions or you look at something that you're going to say to someone, think to yourself, what kind of impact is this going to have in 10 hours? What kind of impact is it going to have in 10 days? What kind of impact is it going to have in 10 months? What kind of impact is it going to have in 10 years? And you just kind of future, and it's like in 10 hours, I already knew if I say yes to this, I'm going to be frustrated because I know that's 120 minutes of my time that didn't go into my greater mission. And then you do that, there's a cumulative effect. If it's 120 minutes here and 120 minutes there and 120 minutes there, well, that's 360 minutes. Let's keep going. Now we're going to stretch it out to 10 months. And you have over 15,000 minutes of spending time on things that kept you stuck. And it's not their fault.
It's yours.
It's my fault. How about you? Like, how are you setting boundaries?
I mean, it looks differently. I had a relationship recently that was no longer serving me. So that person had set boundaries, and the boundaries were in such a state that there was no compromise. And for me, I realized I am not okay meeting your boundaries. I understand where you might be coming from when you had said it, and this person said it years ago. And for me, I was just like, this is where I'm at this current phase of my life. I am no longer allowing myself, to be treated in certain types of ways. So if that requires me shrinking, if that requires me hiding, if that requires me to only be available to connect at certain hours, I am not okay with that at this phase. So I set a loving boundary, and at the end of that boundary, the way I communicated it, I was like, this is me finally just choosing myself. Now, I have not heard from that person since I've done it, but when I went into that interaction, I was very clear, if I lose you, it is what it is. The door will always be open on your part, but things have to shift on how we interact at this point. And so while it could be very hard, and there was tears, there was, are you actually sure you want to do this? I realized in that moment what was being asked of me, what was being kind of guided through source and through multiple messages was, it's time to let this relationship go if they're not willing to step up to the standard that you are now walking from. Because I realized, kind of aligned with what you were saying about if it doesn't fit my mission, how can I be walking around telling women I want to elevate them and I want them to feel like they're able to be seen and heard authentically if I'm allowing myself to be sidelined in a relationship? And so that alone, that counterbalance of what I was accepting versus what I know I should be accepting was so drastic that I had to make that shift.
I love that. And I think that it's just something that's necessary that you have to do. While I can't control what people think, I don't want people to think that, hey, like I'm setting a boundary. Like we don't set boundaries to punish people. I love what you said, compromising with people and collaborating, because sometimes I realize that my boundary is actually so rigid that no one could cross it. And that doesn't help me grow.
Exactly.
If I'm not willing to have a collaborative relationship with people. I think what we're both talking about is really a pattern.
Absolutely.
A pattern where it's you're always violating your internal boundaries. So by nature, you're going to violate external boundaries. And that leads to the ability of you just not saying no. But sometimes I've set boundaries like, okay, I'm only going to do this on this day. And then I recognize like, okay, so for example, really good examples, I'm only going to have my doctor's appointments only on Fridays. This is when I can do it. And it's like, yeah, that's not like real life. You'll actually be going when they can do it. You know, so it's like I have to be willing to have some flexibility in my life. It's not like this rigid structure and
Absolutely.
if you don't align, get out of here, get out of my way or follow me. No, it's hey, like, let me just have like some structure and some guiding principles to get me to my North Star instead of just like wishing and like, oh, I'm gonna just manifest some stuff. No, you can manifest it, but you gotta structure it to manifest it.
Absolutely. It's all about the aligned action when it comes to the manifesting. But for me, I think what you've said about not being so rigid is so important, because I feel like a lot of times what we hear is this concept of like, once you've set your standard, there's no swaying from that. And to a portion of it, I do agree. Once you set the standard, you set your expectations, you kind of meet that. But then there's that understanding, especially in the relationship dynamic, of the other person's needs are different. The way they communicate is different. And the way they, even just their five love languages can be very different from who you are. So for me, even having set that boundary recently, I was just like, I'm willing for a discussion. I'm willing to come with you to a compromise. But all I know is the current set standards do not work for who I am in this current season of life. What was accepted 9-10 years ago is not going to be accepted in this phase of my life going forward, especially as I'm getting stronger in that mission orientation and just my purpose and my vision for what I really want to see out for women. And so when we talk about just being aligned, I think there needs to be that flexibility to allow yourself to align in a way that actually benefits for all parties involved.
I love that. And I do think that it's really important just thinking about standards. I have standards, but other people have standards. So I love what you said, understanding that people have their own desires, their own motives, their own wishes. And I have to adjust. I do have to make adjustments. Like I'm not like queen bee. Like that's not that you can't operate and work with people if you're like that. So I'm definitely willing to adhere to someone else's standards and respect them where they are. And a really good place that this works for me is in my relationships, my relationship with my spouse, my relationship with my adult kids, my relationship with other people. So for example, like my daughter was over the house yesterday or the day before, and she was talking about some things that was going on in her life, and she's got a roommate. So I started saying stuff, and my husband's like, no saying stuff. No. And so I had to go back and apologize and just say, hey, you're an adult. Just because I think this doesn't mean you need to hear it. She has the right to make her own decisions without my influence or my control. That's when people get into offering their services where it's not needed and it's not necessary. And I 100% I didn't even realize I was doing it, and I was violating, her standards and so I had to apologize. And I'm not, we all know we're not perfect, but like I haven't arrived at the queen of the boundary and the queen of the standards. I have to make sure that I respect other people and respect that they have their own inner alignment. And who said that I am the chief operating officer of your thoughts? You're not under my control.
Right. You know, as you got into the subject of control, what areas of life do you find that most people try to control? Not just in relationships, but generally. What parts do you think or do you perceive are being, they're trying to grasp onto?
What parts do people try to control? I think in working with women, you're not going to like this, but it's true. Or maybe they're not going to like this. We try to control other people's moods, their behavior, their thoughts. That's the very first area. That's where that people pleasing comes in. And moms are notorious for doing this. I'm just trying to help. Just have something to say. I just want to fix it. You're trying to control instead of allowing it to just be what it is. But that really goes down to you being uncomfortable with someone else's discomfort. And so you try to go in, you try to step in, and you try to fix the situation. I am the classic overfunctioner. Like I have a little bit of the savior, sister savior.
Yeah.
I'll fix it. I get it. I got it. But really what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to control your mood, your thoughts, your behavior with what? With my great ideas. What do you think?
I love that you touched on this because human moments are coming full circle. I had this exact situation happen to me Thursday, Friday of last week. And it was, I live with my mom, very common in our culture, but I found she was in a mood, is how I will put it. And I don't know if anyone else has that innate kind of ability when you're living with someone for so long and you can kind of tell when they're going from I'm angry to pissed off to I'm about to blow the lid off of something just by their emotions, not even by anything they're actually saying. And I remember having this thought of like, I really should go try to calm her down. I really should like go try to have an understanding of what's going on with her. And I honestly had to step back and be like, am I trying to disvalidate whatever you're feeling right now? Because it also came from the understanding, and I'm trying to get better at this, is taking that pause to be like, I don't control your circumstance and your feelings, but it takes a whole nother level when you're in that space with somebody. So I gently went up to her and I was like, hey, what's going on? And she was just like, I'm stressed about this. And she started listing off. And she had a lot of feelings, so she listed off her feelings, all very valid. And I just simply was like, right now, do you want me to offer advice, to listen to you, or to just shut up? And most people, I think, forget that sometimes all you need is just to be listened to.
Yeah.
And so I think the nice part about being a coach is you start to pick up on those cues. But because her and I are so intertwined, I don't always know what version of me she needs. So I'm like, you tell me, what is most beneficial for you right now? And she just was like, it's a long night. You go take care of yourself, get ready for bed. I will fix it. Like, I will deal with myself. Now, having looked back at that with a different perspective, I realized she just needed to feel whatever it was. And I think so often, especially in our space, we try to, how can I fix this?
Yep.
Instantaneously, not let it sit, not sit with the discomfort of these harsher emotions and just move past them. And what I've come to realize personally is sometimes you just need a minute. And I'm not saying take the entire day or take a week to wallow in some negative feelings. But when they come up, I do think there's something to acknowledging that there's feelings that are coming up and doing the identification of what it is that's coming through for you.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Because when we try to fix people, overfunctioning women, classic overfunctioner, and I can say this because I totally am, what we're really doing is we're avoiding our own pain. So all of our people issues are actually internal issues.
Absolutely. Everything's a mirror.
This person's not the problem. It's actually my reaction to them that's the problem.
I love that you went there.
It's not them, and I'm not talking about like abuse. Like that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about our daily interactions and our relationships with people. I was in a conversation with my husband, and I'm like wanting to get up, and I was like, wait a minute, just like you, what's going on here? Why is it I have a pattern of behavior where I'll want to get up, and I was like, wait a minute, this actually has. It does have something to do with him, but it has something to do with me. So I just asked myself, wait, let's do a little emotional regulation. Number one, what are you feeling emotionally? What are you feeling? My stomach is tightening.
I love that you went straight to where the body is feeling it too. Because
Where is it? My stomach is tightening. What's the emotion? And I realized I felt helpless. I felt helpless. And then it's, okay, why? What's the thought? Because he's actually frustrated and there's nothing I can do to fix it. So my wanting to get up or close off, it wasn't that he was the issue, is that there was an avoidance of my own emotions that were the issue. So we have to learn, like when we're in conversations with people, especially people who kind of like get you going, is we have to regulate our emotions. So what am I feeling in my body? What is the emotion that comes up for me? Feel it. Face it. Then the most important part is, what is the thought driving the emotion? Okay, now how can I change the thought? Instead of trying to fix it, okay, I got it out. Just ask a question. Hey, what do you think that you should do?
Yeah.
I'm not his inner compass. He's his inner compass.
Absolutely.
I'm not trying to master him. I'm actually trying to master me. And I think that that's like taking that emotional regulation, especially in those situations where there's, you have those relationships where there's a high amount of emotional reactivity. You have to actually learn how to regulate yourself. And if you don't know how, then I just say, hey, you know what? Maybe we need to come back to this at another time because I can't regulate myself. They say the amygdala is the emotional processing center in the brain. And when it gets lit up, emotions go up, logic goes down.
I love that you said that. And especially starting off with the body, because quite frankly, I think most people totally miss how much your body is attuned to what's going on with you. And so, personally for me, I've learned that anytime I'm triggered, whether that's through a conversation, something I'm looking at online, something that's, heck, it could be the traffic on the way here, I realize my triggers are my teachers. Because more than it being about the other person or the situation or the thing that's not going my way, I realized the triggers that are triggering me are there to point out where I have not yet grown or something that I have not faced, even if I've thought I have done so. Because I think in our space, a lot of times people want to act like once you hit a certain level, you no longer have issues. And, or what I've personally found, I will have reoccurring themes of things I'm working on that as I hit new levels come up. And so recently I have a deep-seated, lovely abandonment wound, and that started to peek its head. And I was just like, I have done all this work on it. Why is it not? And then I realized, yes, I've done work on it, but has this version of myself done the work on it? Because as we hit new levels, that gap between where we were and where we are shifts. And so you need to be constantly working on that consciousness that goes along with it, in my opinion.
For some reason, I just thought you said so much yummy stuff. Triggers are teachers. So my first thought is, that's like, I'm gonna have to steal that. So that's my wrong. Like, triggers are teachers. I love that because our triggers tell us something. And like when I go through women through my power experience, we look at their emotional pattern because all of us have this emotional pattern. But one of the things that keeps us from dealing with the emotions is we're avoiding our emotions, and it's because we are so busy trying to manage everyone else. Mm-hmm. So one of the things I did is I said, you know what, I'm on an opinion detox.
I love that.
I went on an opinion detox. Why? Because my opinion doesn't matter, because you think about that. Think about the energy it takes to have a thought. Think about the creative power in your mind that it takes to have and formulate a thought. Now think about all of your thoughts that are about other people. What they should be doing, who Kris Jenner should be with, who Miley Cyrus should be singing with, who, like, whatever these celebrities should be doing. The opinions and the energy that you spend on others is not spent on self. Energy spent one place is not being spent another place. And I would say, like, I'm not a kind of person, I'm not a busybody. I don't really get involved in people's opinions, but it's sneaky because I'll find myself just cleaning, doing the dishes, doing whatever, and I've got all these opinions about what other people should be doing with their life. Nobody asked you who needs God when we have your opinion, Sheree. So I was like, okay, I don't like this. I am wasting the creative energy that God gave me on people who have nothing to do with me. I cannot fix their problems. I am not their therapist. I do not hold the line. I should not be making the call. So I was like, okay, let me now pay close attention to what's happening with me. And it's amazing how now I have this amount of creative energy because I'm not spending it on other people, but we end up ignoring our triggers because we're using that energy on other people. So that was my thought about that. And then you talked about growth, just how we grow into all things. And I was reading earlier today, like this morning, as a matter of fact, about trees. And trees, when you look at like classic literature, a lot of times they're symbolic of growth. Mm-hmm. And I didn't know this, but trees have growth scars. They have, I read it this morning. They have growth scars. So there's the scar, the last scar is just the point of growth. It indicates the point of growth. So whenever like the abandonment wound or whatever the wound is, all that is you just need to grow. It's just an indication. Oh, it comes up. That doesn't mean that I'm still struggling with the wound. I'm actually growing beyond the wound. I'm growing. But again, you will not know if you can grow if you're spending all of your time, your energy, the mental resources of your mind on other people's life instead of your life.
Beautiful. And absolutely. I realized for me, the more I look for external how to fix other people or how to try to control these situations, whether that's financial or even as simple as controlling the mentalities of kind of that like lineage cycle situations, right? The more you spend the energy of, I need to shift a perspective or I need to do this, you're actually releasing the ability to make the change that you actually want. And what I mean by that is I realized the more I'm sitting here trying to prove a certain perspective or prove a certain point to be understood and perceived in a certain way, the more it ends up just losing its power.
How'd you find that out? I'm curious.
Honestly, so I think what's great for me is as I've stepped further deeper into my business, I find that business is spiritual. So you find that all your things will come up. Anything you thought that you have, that you've worked on, I will tell you, you will find a new perspective on how to work through it then. And as I've started to step into that light, I realized I came from a very young age of like, I need to prove and I need to earn my worth and I am going to show you. And I finally got to a point, and this is very fresh, where I was speaking to someone and I go, well, tell me about myself. What is your perspective of me? Because, and it wasn't from a, I need your validation. But when you've spent your years trying to prove to people who you are and that mentality, everything I thought I was proving was nothing of what they were seeing. It was maybe 2% of what I thought. So it got me to realize just off of that interaction and then looking out overarching of like just the themes that were reoccurring in my life or certain relationships, how they were navigating. And I realized for me, I got to a place where it was just like, you don't see me because A, I'm not showing you the authentic version of myself. And I'm being this person that I've shape-shifted into being. So you will see me, love me, approve of me, think I am worthy, whatever. And I realized they're missing the whole person on the other side. So all that effort, all that perception was essentially for nothing. And I realized the overarching theme is when you get to a point where you no longer need to prove and you can be just authentic and messy and not perfect, that's when experiences start to magnetize. It's not that version of you that you think you have to be.
I like that. It's stepping into who you already are.
Absolutely.
You know, I there is something about us, or that, you know, you have a business, or you're a manager, you're a director, or working somewhere that you have to prove. Now, you do need to bring value, of course. You need to bring value. You need to bring your skill set. But sometimes we can mistake our value for our worth. Us giving value for my worth. And that goes back to how I help women to stop over functioning, because it's like, oh, the more I do, I've got to prove, you know, that I'm doing a good job. To a degree in your work, yes, you want to do a good job, but there does hit a point where you're trying to get validation from people instead of validating yourself.
Yeah. A line that's been very potent for me in this season of life is conviction over validation. So what do I mean by that? Conviction, having the certainty within yourself, certainty that your gifts are being given to you by Creator, God, universe, whatever you call it. Having that certainty and the knowing that whatever it is that's placed on your heart is going to be set out for you. Otherwise, it wouldn't be placed there. It takes aligned action on your part, but it's not about the external validation, the people that you want who are either watching or on the sidelines or who you think you can impress. It's not about needing their opinions to match that. It's about coming to a place of, I believe God gave me this message or God gave me this purpose, and I need to align myself with what His vision is. And having that knowing and that essentially belief that it'll come to fruition at the end of the day. Because so much of us, especially women, I find, are looking for, how can I make a point to others? How can I be basically just, again, how do I prove that I'm worth it? Or how can I earn your love? Big one. And I realized at the end of the day, I don't need the validation from others. All I need validation from is God.
I agree. I think that's why I really work with women to understand their purpose, because it was a life changing for me. Once I got clear on my vision and my purpose, I knew exactly what I was supposed to be doing. So your opinion may be nice, but it's just not necessary. I no longer need your opinion to fill my own self. So it's like you need to use your voice. But before you can use your voice, you need to know your voice. Know what that voice is here to say. And then what these hands are meant to do. It's my responsibility to know my purpose. It's my responsibility to give myself my own validation. And my validation comes from God. Now, do I want people around me? Of course I want people around me, but I'm not going to allow their mood, their opinion, their thoughts to now get me to shrink, and now I have bad behavior. It's very important to know what your purpose is. And I think the reason why is because if you don't know your purpose, you can misuse your purpose. You know, like this phone, my cell phone here, well, the purpose, it has multiple purposes, but it's there to make phone calls. But you know what I can do? I can take this phone and I can throw it.
Yeah.
But that's not its intended purpose. Now, it would be effective and it would hurt someone, but I would be misusing it.
Yeah.
Why would I want to misuse it? Why would I want to misuse it? Because when I do that, I miss out on all the functionality that it was designed for. And I think it's the same thing with our life. When we don't know our purpose, more than likely we're living someone else's purpose. And you miss out on everything. You miss out on the gifts in your life, the calling in your life. You're going to miss out with people in your life. And it really goes back to you understanding your purpose. So I'm like, hey, like, let's help you understand, like, your life is a story. And you can rewrite it, but you need to know, just use your voice. Know, why do you have this voice? And once you find that out, it's like, hey, I've gotten this part of validation. Like, we don't grow out of like not wanting validation, because I can go into that with clients and with students. You know, you want to do a good job and go into over functioning, and you want people to get a good experience, but take a step back. Wait a minute. I'm already validated. I already have validation. So I do what I do not to try to get validation. I do what I do because I have validation. What do you think?
I love this. I really do. Because absolutely, I agree 100%. And what question kind of came through for me, for those who are listening right now, it's a double whammy. So what is a way to find their voice? And on the back end of that, how does finding their voice translate to finding their purpose?
Oh, that's so good. What is a way to find their voice? Well, first of all, if you find it, you need to know where you lost it. That's such a good way. Where did you lose it? So now we track back. Where did I begin to lose my voice? It was probably with some pain. There was probably a moment, a person, a situation where instead of you using your voice, you lost your voice. And if you look at that situation in your life, it's a very painful point. And now you've got to extract from that very painful point the lessons that you learned. What was the lesson that you learned from that very painful situation? And out of those lessons, and I go deeper in this, you need to say, who needs these lessons? Who are the people that need these lessons? Then, now how can I use my voice to give people those lessons? So for me, I just take a step back. Where did it happen? Oh my gosh, it happened with my son being diagnosed with special needs. Wait a minute. Well, I shrunk. What were the lessons I learned? I'm more than the people around me. I am more than a wife. I am more than a mother. I am a person. I am powerful. I am capable. I'm a bad chick. And you can get over pain. My voice was, it doesn't matter what has happened to you. You can overcome this pain. Now then I said, ooh, who needs this voice? Women. Women. Women who have been through a divorce, a tragedy with a loved one, who have shrunk in their life, who have shrunk to their past trauma. If I hold back my voice, they risk losing their voice. So now I see, oh, this is a responsibility, which is why we cannot be depending on everybody else's validation for the purpose that God gave us. What about you?
This is so good. I knew this conversation would be juicy, and I am so grateful we're having this because for me, I definitely had this moment even recently. So I love that we're having this conversation because I've started to use my voice, and for the longest time, I had this moment of starting to pay attention to signs and synchronicities and kind of things that are happening in your life because I've realized there are no coincidences. They all kind of lead to certain things. And there was one day I was doing a meditation, and there's a song called Speechless, which was in the Aladdin movie, the remake, or live action version. And it just started playing while I was meditating. And in the lyrics of that song, it's essentially, there's a part where it's like the story is ending of essentially not using your voice, of not being in power with your voice. And I remember listening to that during that meditation because if I laid out how it happened, it was playing in the living room. I was doing my meditation in my bedroom. And I was just like, this does not happen. Normally, this does not happen. And I just had a milestone moment. And so I remember just being very distraught about why is the house not quiet at 4 a.m. at that day. And I remember walking out to the living room and hearing the lyrics of this song. And I was just like, and ironically, that song finished and literally nothing else played afterwards. And I was like, same reaction. I was like, that alone was a message. And so I was sitting there going, okay, so that's a message. What is this message from? And I started to realize in that moment, and it planted a seed of realizing that I was not using my voice. I had shut off my voice. And so it was this link of, how do I figure out where I stopped? And like you said, it was a moment of pain, of immense pain that had a lot to do with my general wounding. But it took me about 6-8 months from that meditation day to really realize, okay, I know I'm not using my voice. And as I started to progress and use the voice and start to own who I am in my authentic skin, I realized slowly where that missing link was because it was a repressed memory. And so it being from a point of pain is absolutely usually the truth because we don't just come through this planet and be like, you know what, I'm not going to live my most authentic expression. If you look at little children, that's why they're so beautiful. They're in their own essence. They're not afraid of being too much. They're not afraid of being too little. I will take up the space and I will own it, and I am not apologizing for it. But somewhere along the line from being that child that's fully expressing themselves, you find yourself in this gap of, how do I mold to make mom happy or dad happy or people at school happy? How do I fit in? And the more we start thinking those thoughts and conforming our personalities, the more we lose who we are authentically.
Yeah, that's so good. I believe that to be so true. Yeah, little kids, they are who they are. And I always say, you're not born with insecurities. Somebody taught you to have them.
Absolutely. And I think that's where I'm not a mom, but something I've realized is the importance of the communication people have with their children early on. Because when I've started to do a lot of the inner child healing on myself, I realized, well, there's certain points of certain phrases. Hey, don't do that. It's not safe. You mean well by it. But by instilling it, you're actually instilling the fear. And it ends up being a stacking of this human experience that we all go through to some degree. So there's something to be said about trying to find that most authentic expression of yourself, whatever that looks like.
Yeah, I love that.
I'm so grateful for you.
I'm so happy. Thank you.
So, at this point in life, what would you say you're noticing the themes of emotional resistance with women?
At this point in my life, I notice that the themes as far as emotional resistance with women is being comfortable with very uncomfortable emotions. That can be very difficult, especially the older that people get, because I'm almost 50, so I can say this. I hope I don't offend
She
anyone.
looks great for her age, though.
Like, I don't want to offend anybody, but you've heard of people being set in their ways.
Yeah.
And like, I'm not changing, like this is the way it's always been. It's because we can become so uncomfortable with our emotions, and it actually takes a lot of cognitive energy to deal with something that's very uncomfortable and to just let it sit.
Yeah.
And and the more you live life, the more experiences, good and bad, that you have. So that ability to sit with very uncomfortable emotions breeds and builds emotional resilience, which we all need. So we have to learn how to just sit in it. I'm not saying stay in it. Feel it. Rise above it.
Yeah. 100%. I think when we're afraid of sitting in the uncomfortable, that's when we're actually doing more harm to ourselves than good. Yeah. Because what I've noticed is the more you repress and you suppress emotions, the more your body just holds on to it. Whereas the discomfort of sitting with it is not great, but at least you're no longer storing it. So I'm going to go ahead and kind of give you an off-the-cuff question now. What would you say, what would be a moment for you where you felt like, okay, I'm starting to step out and step into this like leadership or boldness, where you felt like you're finally stepping into who you were?
It actually involved people, because we have this side, it's called the blind side, where it's Shahari's window, but it's called the blind side, where people can see, but you can't see. And I did not see what I was doing. So it took having some good people to say, hey, we've noticed that you're a gatherer. We noticed that you're, a leader. So I had people around me that spoke life into me, because I do believe in inner resilience, be sovereign, self-mastery, but there is only so much that your own self knows. There's always going to be an aspect to you that you can't see, good and bad. That's why I love your question of, hey, how do you experience me? What is it that you see? And so having people around me that said, hey, like, we think you're a leader, the spark was already there. They just ignited it. It was like flickering like a gas, like on your gas stove, and all they did was just turn it, and it lit up, because I didn't even recognize all of the growth that was happening on the inside of me, and that was the beginning of what I would call my self-mastery journey.
I love that you mentioned people, because I think so much of our space is tended to be very self-reliant. And a conversation I was just recently having with a friend, because she posed the question, well, when you are in these lower energy states, we'll call it, who do you turn to? And I was like, well, quite honestly, and this was a patterning I had since I was young, I tend to just work on it myself. I will cocoon, I will self-store, not let anybody into this mess. And then potentially, once I've already navigated it, that is when I will come back and be like, hey, I had this breakdown, but here's the breakthrough that came out of it. And she was just like, that's not necessarily normal. Because we're humans that are meant to have this connection and this vulnerability and these conversations, because what I might be experiencing might be something that you're mirroring that you don't realize. But if I'm not open and willing to have that discussion, you don't know it, you don't benefit from it. And so for me, it's also realizing when you're allowing yourself to be vulnerable and when you're allowing yourself to actually be authentic, it also helps those around you see you and fully see you. Whereas I think there was a point of me where I would have these heavy emotions and I would sit with them and I would process and I would do the breath work and I would work my way out of it. And that's great because at least I'm not dependent if a person's not able to meet me there. But I realized coming to the season of like, oh, it's okay to take off the mask and be like, I'm human and I still go through shit.
Yeah.
And so, like what your friends were doing for you, that ignition, when we know our depths and we show our depths, but we also show our value, that's what people actually notice about us. It's not about how perfect and how much of a mask can I have on.
I think I said this before, I think I might have said this, that I really believe we're not called to be independent. We're called to be interdependent. No one who ever did anything great did it alone.
Absolutely. You need a community.
We look at Harriet Tubman, and yes, queen. I don't want to call her the queen of the railroad, but she actually had connections and she collaborated with people. Winston Churchill, Abraham Lincoln, Oprah. It's through collaboration that gives you greater competence, but being by yourself just makes you weird.
Yeah. I love that you ended it that way. Okay, so quick fire round. I've slightly shifted the conversation questions because you've already done this once. So, what's a recent book that you find changed your life?
It's by Laura Vernick. It's so good. Emotional relationships. Oh my gosh, I'm going to get it wrong.
I will put the title in the show notes.
Yes. But right now I'm reading by Nona Jones, Rejection is Protection. It's fire.
Oh, I love that title alone. I'm going to have to get it.
Rejection is Protection. So good.
So good. Okay, so what's a song that instantly lifts your mood?
Rocky. Mama said knock you out. Like, those are my go-tos.
I love you. Okay, what's one relationship lesson you wish you'd learned sooner?
You have one mouth, two ears. What do you think that means?
Beautiful. A place in the world that makes you feel the most alive.
Oh my goodness.
Outside of Vegas.
Outside of Vegas. Most alive. Well, as of right now, I'm really loving Utah. I just love going up there. It's so serene and beautiful.
Okay, I need to check out Utah more, apparently. Best advice you've ever received in one sentence.
The best advice I've ever received in one sentence. The only thing that comes to mind is who needs God when we have your opinion. Clearly, my opinion is not necessary.
Love that. If you weren't doing this work, what would you be doing?
Oh my gosh, I'd have my own talk show.
You'd be great at that.
I love people.
You'd be so good at it. Okay, morning person or night owl?
I'm morning.
I can tell. One thing you want women to stop apologizing for. And that's our heavy hitter for the end.
Oh yeah, one thing I want women to stop apologizing for is their story.
I love this. Thank you. This was such a beautiful conversation and kind of like dual interview situation. But I love the way that you're just so all for women. Your heart is of service. And I want to acknowledge you because there's not a lot of women who are allowing themselves to fully be out there and fully be outspoken about their stories. And I think that the way you use your story is beautiful. And I'm just so honored to know you. And I'm so glad to be able to have conversations that are so of value for this collective consciousness.
Thank you. Thank you, Anita. And I'm so honored to be a part of you and what you're doing and the Her Method and all of the things. So thank you for having me. It was 100% awesome. And thank you for tuning in too.
And that's it until the next episode. If you liked what you heard today, please go ahead and leave a review down below and reach out to us on Instagram to let us know your thoughts. Our handles will be in the show notes. And until next time, bye for now.